Even if you're new to tabletop role-playing games, you've probably heard of D&D. But lately, another name has started to pop up in those same conversations: Daggerheart. It's a new fantasy role-playing game from the team behind Critical Role, and if you've heard the buzz, you might be wondering, is it a new part of D&D? Is it a new addition, a different take on the game, or is it something completely different? And more importantly, if you're just getting into the hobby and you're hearing about this stuff for the first time, should you start with Daggerheart instead of D&D? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, I'm Brian. Today, we're going to walk through some of the biggest similarities and differences between these two fantasy role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons, and the newer narrative-first system called Daggerheart. Now, full disclosure, I've read the rules, I've built characters, I've watched actual plays, but I haven't run a full campaign of Daggerheart yet, so this isn't a full review. It's a comparison, especially for folks who are just getting started or thinking about switching things up. All right, let's get started, and let's begin where most players begin: character creation. One of the first things you'll do in any tabletop role-playing game is make a character, and the cool thing is you can build a similar type of character in both of these systems. Now, most of the classic character archetypes are available in both of these systems, even if they might go by slightly different names, but the way that you build them feels really different. In D&D, you start with your species, your class, and your background. Then you assign your 6 ability scores: your strength, dexterity, constitution, wisdom, and charisma. And you do this by either rolling for them, or using a standard array of scores, or using a point-buy system. There are a few different ways that you can come up with these. And the class that you choose will give you features like spellcasting or fighting styles and things like that. It's important to note here that you also get a subclass, but not until you reach level 3, at least in the latest edition of the game, which means that you get some time to play your character and feel things out before you pick a specialization. Now, that said, you also get to select your proficiencies and your equipment and your spells if you're a spellcaster. D&D also gives you the tools like ideals, bonds, and flaws to help shape roleplay, even if you skip writing a backstory. And if you're the kind of gamer that likes to customize things over time, well, you've got feats and multi-classing and a bunch of other options available. So I think D&D gives you a structured, flexible system for building your character and planning for growth. You can actually sort of plan what you want to do from the beginning and see how things play out. Daggerheart takes a different approach, focusing more on identity and tone and the immediate story potential. So you start by choosing your class and subclass right off the bat. You don't wait for a subclass, you get it right there from the start. And then you build your heritage. That's a combination of your ancestry and community. This is sort of like picking your species and the kind of environment that you're from. You get to assign some modifiers to 6 abilities. These are similar to the ones in D&D, but they're strength, agility, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. So you have a bank of 6 different modifiers: +2, +1, +1, +0, +0, and -1, and you assign those to your traits. You also get to choose a couple of experiences, and this is where the narrative first really comes into play. So you can describe things like, "I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing," or some other description about you, and those have some guidelines to help you with that. So that means if one of your experiences fits a situation, you can spend a hope token before rolling to gain a bonus equal to the experience's value. Usually it's a +1 or a +2. More on hope in a bit, though. You'll also get a pair of domains like Arcana or Grace or one of the others that they have available, and that shapes your character's spells and abilities. There's a built-in step for creating connections, too, with others at the table, so right there from the start, you're trying to describe how you're all connected. So at least from the intent of the design of the game, D&D does lean into stats and structure a little bit more, I think, and Daggerheart leans into story and identity, but it really depends on your group and your table. No matter which way you go, whichever game you choose to play with, you get a fully formed character. They just take different roads to get there. Okay, let's talk about the core mechanics. D&D uses the familiar D20 system, at least it's familiar if you've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for a while or other D20-based systems. And it is now pretty straightforward. You roll a 20-sided die, you add a modifier, and then you try to meet or beat a difficulty class that's set by the Dungeon Master. There's also an advantage and disadvantage mechanic, and this is where you can roll 2 d20s and take the higher if you have advantage, or the lower result if you have disadvantage. A natural 20 usually means critical hit, and a natural 1 often means automatic failure on attack rolls, not necessarily on other types of checks. It depends on your table. So really, it's sort of a pass-fail system on these rolls. You either make it or you don't, and then the DM helps interpret what that means in the story. It's simple, it's scalable, and it is time-tested across thousands of tables. It's designed to be consistent and fairly easy to learn, but it's not the only system out there, not by a long shot. There are a lot of other games out there, and Daggerheart has adopted a different approach, the duality dice. In Daggerheart, you roll two 12-sided dice, one for hope and one for fear, and you usually have different colors for these to make it easy to see. Now, you add the results together and then apply your trait modifier. So if I rolled a 10 on one of my d12s and a 2 on the other, and then I had a 2 strength modifier, for example, I'd have a total of 14 for that roll. But then I'd check to see which one of those dice rolled higher, hope or fear, and that shapes the emotional tone of the outcome. So I might have a success with hope, a success with fear, a failure with hope, or a failure with fear. So there are several potential outcomes on each roll, not just a binary success or failure. This is interesting. Anytime you roll with hope, you earn hope points or tokens if you're using physical counters to help you. And hope is a resource that you can spend to activate or ramp up your abilities. Now, the GMs don't actually roll for general challenges like this. They actually just get to do stuff for the most part, but they do get adversary attacks using a d20, so they just use that 20-sided dice sometimes, and they can use fear to up the stakes. So if you remember when I rolled with hope before, if I had rolled with fear, the GM earns a fear token, and they can use those tokens to introduce complications and raise the tension and shift the momentum of a scene. So you can see in Daggerheart, it's not just did I succeed, it's how do I feel and what happens next. Let's talk a little bit about those famous words you hear in a lot of D&D sessions, roll for initiative. In D&D combat, there is a specific sequence that you follow, a turn order. So you roll initiative and you act in that order during the combat. Now, some classes and feats even interact with initiative in a lot of different ways. You might get a bonus to act faster. You have a bonus so that amps your roll up a little bit so that you go sooner. Or you might have a feature that actually lets you swap turns with someone else. Initiative becomes a part of your tactics. It can slow things down in big groups, but it adds structure and strategic clarity in a lot of ways. So that's gotta be in Daggerheart too, right? Well, Daggerheart actually does things a little differently. It replaces turn order, going in a specific order for that combat, with something called the spotlight. At the start of a scene, the GM or the players choose who takes the spotlight first. You take one meaningful action on your turn in the spotlight, and then you pass the spotlight to someone else. It's sort of like the camera kind of following the action within a movie. There's even a tag team option where two characters can use the spotlight to pull off some type of combo move. And the GM helps pace the scene and respond to the group's creativity. That said, they know that a lot of people like having specific, turn order and being able to track that stuff. So they have an optional spotlight tracker that you can use if your group wants more structure. So while D&D is precise and tactical, Daggerheart is intended to be more cinematic and player-driven. But honestly, I think it just depends on what the table prefers and how you like to play the game. And speaking of combat, we talked a little bit about how you work in order, but let's talk about how combat in general works in both systems. In D&D, combat is tactical. I've always felt like it was sort of a mini game within the role-playing game in a lot of ways. You track movement and actions and reactions and hit points and positioning, and you might trigger opportunity attacks and use area of effect spells or make decisions about concentration. There's a lot going on sometimes. Essentially, D&D is built around the action economy. What you can do and what you can't do on your turn. And the grid or the map can matter a lot or not at all. Some groups use complete theater of the mind, others love battle maps and minis. But either way, I think it's a little bit more about clarity and strategy. And for those tactically minded players, this is really fun. And it can go a long way into paying off all of those things that you've done to build your character the right way. Well, not really the right way, but the way you want them to work. On the other hand, let's take a look at Daggerheart. It uses that spotlight system for combat too. Players roll to attack, defend, or react. The GM narrates outcomes and can spend fear tokens to raise the stakes. Damage comes in different tiers, 1 point, 2 points, or 3 hit points, and armor can actually absorb some of those hits. So you've got armor and hit points, but you've also got stress, and that tracks separately from HP, and if it builds up too far, bad things happen. So it's not really a rules-light system. There's still stuff to track. There's still some tactical things that you should be thinking about. So while D&D focuses on positioning and actions, Daggerheart puts more weight on tone and pacing. There's still plenty of tension, it just feels different. So again, I think it's what you're used to and what you prefer. But hey, after all that combat and all those different encounters in both systems, you need to level up, right? So let's talk about it. D&D uses either experience points or milestones. You can kind of decide that at your table. Each class has a fixed progression, but you've got plenty of choices along the way. You unlock features and spells and sometimes even feats if you're using them. Leveling is predictable, and that's a good thing because you can plan your build, multi-classing, and story moments around how you level up. And yeah, you'll find hundreds of YouTube videos out there that will help you min-max your favorite class. You can build the optimal build of whatever character you're trying to, put together. On the other hand, Daggerheart goes with narrative milestones instead of tracking experience points. There's not even an option to track XP, it's just milestones. Now, each level, you choose 2 upgrades. That might mean that you have more hit points or trait boosts or new experiences or even domain cards that you're adding to your deck. Later on in the levels, you can unlock specialization and mastery to deepen your role. It's still mechanical, but your growth is shaped by the story that you're telling. So let's talk about how you can try these games for free. I'll leave links in the description below. D&D doesn't have sort of a unified Quickstart guide, by the way, but you can piece one together. If you've got the D&D basic rules, which is free and covers the core mechanics and a few of the classes, you can also add in things like the Dragon of Icespire Peak preview adventure, which is great, and it gives you some pre-generated characters that you can use as well. So together, that gives you everything that you need for a free one-shot. On the other hand, Daggerheart went a step further and packaged things up really well, I think. The Sablewood Messenger's Quickstart is completely free. You get intro rules, pre-generated characters, a one-shot adventure, and printable extras that you can use. It's a full experience without needing to get the core book. Again, check the description for a link where you can go and get all that stuff completely free. I would check out Kristen's Epic Adventures on YouTube. She does a great job of walking through what to expect, and she ran it for her group already, so I'll link her video in the description as well. To wrap things up, without being too wishy-washy, both of these choices are pretty good. If you're starting out with role-playing games, you can't really go wrong with either one of these. D&D is tried and true. It's where most of us fell in love with the hobby. It's structured, it's flexible, and it's supported by an enormous player base. Daggerheart is newer, but it's built with heart. It's emotional, it's cinematic, it's collaborative by design. And you don't need to pick one as your forever game. You should be able to play both. You can try a one-shot, or start a mini-game, or branch out into other systems too. Play Shadowdark, Quest, Wanderhome, Fate, Blades in the Dark. There's so many role-playing games out there that you can play, and that's a good thing. Hey, by the way, if you're a Daggerheart player or game master and you notice that I messed up with something, please let me know in the comments so that it will help make this a better resource for everybody else too. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notifications. You can also sign up for our Geek Philosophy monthly newsletter and get a free campaign planning guide. The link's in the description. Okay, thanks for watching, and remember, embrace different styles and approaches. If the group is having fun, you're doing it right. Cheers.